Welcome, Anatomy fans. Today we're dissecting God's Not Dead 2, the sequel to God's Not Dead by Harold Kronk, and we've got special guest Pat Boone calling in a little bit later, so stay tuned on Anatomy of a Movie.
Welcome to Popcorn Talk, featuring movie discussion, news, and interviews. Popcorn Talk. We talk movies.
That's right, we do, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you guys for joining us. If you're returning, if you're a first-time watcher, listener, welcome. We appreciate you. As you know, we're very spoiler-filled, so go see the movie first, then come back to us. We've got Marissa Serafini today.
Hello, everyone.
And we've got, joining us today, if you guys are fans of AfterBuzz TV, you might have seen her there on various shows, but we've got Mindy Thomas today here on Anatomy of a Movie. Welcome.
I am so honored to be with you guys. We're going to really rock this house, right?
Oh,
That's right, you made it happen. We were going back and forth earlier today because I was trying to think who could be good to talk about this movie, and I thought of Mindy, and then Mindy thinks of Pat to get on the show, and she made it happen.
See? It's heart to
you go.
heart in here, okay?
That's right. So as always, let's start with overall thoughts on this movie. Why don't let's start with you, Marissa. We'll go to you, Mindy, and then I'll
Honestly,
go
I actually
last.
thoroughly enjoyed this film. I do have to admit, I did not see the first one before seeing this one. I saw God's Not Dead 2 because I think in some weird world of my mind that a couple years ago when this movie came out, I think I myself personally categorized the first one under documentary, that I thought it was a documentary, therefore I immediately did not go see it. But I heard so many people were talking about it.
That's how much you dislike documentaries?
Yes, really, that in short term, yes.
Interesting.
I actually
And-
dreamed I was in a documentary last week. I don't know where that
There
was
you
from.
go. But I didn't go see the first one, and then I saw the trailer for the second one. I was like, hey, that looks good. And then watching this film, it's like, now I'm kicking myself that I didn't see the first one, so of course I went back to
And
see
in a
the
minute,
first
you're
one.
a Melissa
And I'm
Joan
like,
Hart fan, aren't you?
I mean, you and me both have watched Sabrina the Teenage Witch, let's be real. So, yes. I thoroughly enjoyed this movie, and I am a big fan of Jesse Metcalfe as well. But I liked the messages and the tone that this film was. And it's such a strong topic that can be controversial. But I think this movie handled it delicately and politely in ways that people can enjoy it.
Yeah, a great legal drama. I'll always enjoy that. Of course, you can't handle the truth. There was a great moment by Jesse Metcalfe, although that's not exactly what he said, but referring to A Few Good Men, Tom Cruise. That's one I have to watch like about every year. So any legal drama's got to kind of rise up to that occasion. And I really felt like this held its own. I mean, there was a lot of great drama in the courtroom. Of course, the teacher had offended the district and parents of a student, and there was a situation there, but there was also rules, and there's not always black and white with certain rules, so to speak. And so there was loopholes and gray areas that they were exploring. And I liked how Jesse Metcalfe, he's wearing the suits that were kind of shabby, and then up until the last day he puts on the fancy garb, and he's like, well, I'm just coming off of 10 episodes also of the OJ
Simpson.
Right, so I've been watching that diligently, and so I really enjoyed how he came in there and kind of pulled the Johnny Cochran moment, so to speak, and dressing up to defend the defendant there.
And you've seen the first one. We talked about that a little bit, so...
Yes,
You enjoyed that one
absolutely.
too.
Yes, I enjoyed it because Kevin Sorbo, and he is just really a phenomenal person and actor. And as you know, I was in a Christian movie with him not too long ago called One More Round, and that's a boxing movie that is also in the same Christian media genre. So that was really fun, and it just really nails down the heart of the Christian community, which a lot of times gets a lot of criticism, judgment, and people think they know what they're thinking when they really don't know what they're thinking. And it's kind of a love community, but then it gets misunderstood. And so I really enjoy this being depicted on the silver screen.
Yeah. What I like about this movie is that it is a good movie. Now, we'll talk about it a little bit later. It hasn't gotten the critical response that I think it deserves. I mean, this is a really low score for some. I think 29 on Rotten Tomatoes. I think is very undeserving. You might not, because I think it should be in this way. Whether or not you agree with the agenda of the movie, you have to say that it's a good movie. And I think that's first and foremost, just because the same way, like, there could be a political movie. If you don't agree with the politics, that doesn't necessarily make it a bad movie. And that's my biggest criticism of the critics right now, is that's the point. Like, when we talk about this, there's a lot of great story structure. There's a lot of great beats. As you know, you mentioned the courtroom drama. I actually liked a lot of the grandfather and Melissa Grace's scenes together.
Yes.
So for me, those were some of my scenes, and they were well told. And each of the characters had their own identity, and they had their own beliefs. So they weren't pushing an agenda. They just were real people in a real world, and that's my biggest criticism of people who just don't understand this movie.
Yeah, and they brought back a lot of the cast, a lot of the nuances from the first one that I enjoyed. And who's to say, really, if you should bring back all of those or some of those, but I thought it worked. I like David White. He's one of the main actors, and he's a friend of ours that we've gotten more acquainted with over the years. And so I've seen him in some action roles like Revelation Road. There's been a series of 3 of those, and this is great because he's got a comedy shtick, so to speak, but he's like a pastor. And in the first one, he was having a hard time starting his car; it kept dying. And then at the end of the first one, there was an amazing just climax moment that everything catapulted and kind of tied together. And then in this one, it was, again, the legal drama, taking me into the courtroom. I mean, I love it. It makes me feel like I can just argue any case. So bring it on, Phil. Just bring it on, Marissa. I'm here.
I'm on your side. Why do we have to argue? So we'll get some other people to debate us.
Oh, I love that. Tweet us, right?
That's right.
All right.
And one of the things I was able to find a lot of the background about this. There's a lot of great interviews with Melissa Joan Hart, but as someone kind of is tied into a lot of these people, can you talk about a little bit the development? Obviously it's a sequel to the first one, but what kind of spurred it for them to really make this one?
The second one.
Yeah, this one. Yeah.
Well, I think that there was a teacher that she was teaching in school, right? And so, I mean, it's an American classroom. If you go back to the founding fathers and everything our country is based upon, which they touched upon actually in the script, which I thought was very, very well written. They had some people get on the stand eventually. The case of Christ, for example, one of the authors, and different ones that they were like, look, I tried to disprove this. The one man says, I was an atheist. I'm trying to disprove this, and then I end up believing the very thing I didn't expect to believe.
I really like the criminal case. Yeah, when with his forensics, I actually liked him a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fun the way that they were going at it in there, and then they didn't really know how they were going to approach it till the end. But back to your question, why did they really make this second one? Like, what was the appeal? I think that the court. Okay, so being a teacher, right? A lot of teachers feel like, okay, I can be there, but I can say this, I can't say that. There's district policy, right? Type politics, and if you want your tenure, and you want to teach the students, and you don't want to be offensive to anyone, but at the same time, if you do believe a certain way. So what she was doing is actually teaching history in the classroom. She had quoted Martin Luther King Jr. She had quoted Jesus from the Bible. And then the first was not, the former was not offensive, the latter was. And so here she's teaching a history lesson. And then it was interesting because the girl had approached her. So I think it's just really that this scenario is going on, and it's been going on for years, about faith in public schools. And
I don't know if you guys stayed for the credits, but there was that scroll of here's kind of cases that have been cited with similar instances, and it was quite a long list.
I thought that was a fascinating thing to keep people to show this is a real thing, a real problem that we deal with, or like the community deals with on a daily basis, and that that these are legit cases that everyone needs to know about. And I counted, there was about 23 or 24 cases that they listed just then, not including the ones that may have popped up since. And I thought that was really cool because it added like also credibility to the reason like these cases that have existed beforehand are so important that it spawns like a whole kind of movie like this.
right.
And that, I mean, yes, those are real, but like let's fictionalize it in for this movie, but know that this is actually a real thing.
Yeah, there's a lot of people believe in a lot of things, and I think that we just had Easter, for example, and that's the thing where they really believe that Jesus, and I do too. Historically he was crucified, so and then 3 days later he rose again. And how does somebody know that? But they witnessed him personally. It's just like if somebody walked in the studio here, like when Pat Boone calls in, we're going to witness his voice. And so it's a witness of, have you heard his voice? Have you witnessed seeing him? And to me, that's pretty amazing. I mean, it's pretty amazing that people believe that way in the first place, but it's because of the witness.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, speaking of Pat, Mark, if you will, why don't you get him on the line and then just let us know when he's ready, and we'll get him in.
Yeah, I think it's also cool just on the development end as well for this film that the writers, Chuck Konzelman and Carrie Solomon, they met up with the producer, Michael Scott, one of the main producers of this film. And because they always had this idea of a 3-part movie. And for the second one, it was more like a call to action, and they always had the idea of having a female protagonist for the second film, hence Melissa Joan Hart.
Yes, and speaking of her, we have her grandfather from the movie, Pat Boone. How are you, sir?
Just a moment. I'll get him.
All right. So while we wait for him, we'll just continue. So yeah, I mean, by the way, for those of you not familiar with Pat Boone, he's an American legend.
Yes, absolutely.
And Mindy, why don't you give a little background?
Hello.
Hello, Pat. Hello,
Hi.
sir. How are you?
I'm fine.
You have Mindy Thomas here. You have Marissa Serafini, and I'm Phil Svitek.
Hi. Well, hello. It's Phil. Hi, Phil. And who else?
We have Marissa Serafini. Say hi.
Hello.
MRSA.
Hello, Pat. Nice to meet you.
MRSA.
Marissa. There you go.
And
Isn't MRSA, am I wrong? Isn't MRSA something you can catch in a hospital?
No, it's Marissa. There you go.
It's what?
Marissa. It's hard. You can
Anyway,
call me
I don't mean to, I mean, that's just ridiculous, but my, not attempted a joke, I really thought that's what they call this thing you can catch, kind of a infection in the hospital. But anyway, that's not you.
No, it's not.
And I believe you already know Mindy Thomas.
Yes, I'm trying to remember.
Yeah, we go way back.
I think went to school with Ryan. Am I right?
That's correct. Yes, sir.
Yep. And Ryan, by the way, continues to do better. He's still not all the way back, but we're getting there. We're getting him back.
That's good. Yeah. He's definitely continuing to be in my thoughts and prayers. We went to Pepperdine together, and Ryan, just a brilliant up-and-coming filmmaker, had an accident at that time.
Yes.
Yeah. And so it's been quite the journey for him. But Pat, we are so thankful that you are here today just to share your heart and also being a part of this amazing film, God's Not Dead 2.
Well, I'm so thrilled to be part of that because, the first film, and I hope you saw it, and you know that it was a very successful faith-based film, as was Heaven is for Real and several others that have been really making an impression, not just on people who see the films, but on the industry. Because the industry is saying, you mean a film like God's Not Dead can gross over $100 million? How can we make that kind of film? Well, they are trying, but what they're learning is you can't make a legitimate faith-based film unless you're using faith-based people to do it.
Yes.
And a faith-based writer. That is somebody who knows what it's all about. But yeah, I'm thrilled to be in it, and people tell me that though my part is not throughout the film, it is sporadically from time to time in the film, and it is significant in the things I get to say.
Yes.
Absolutely. I was actually, before you got on, I was saying one of the strongest moments for me was when you said to her that the teacher is silent. That little moment I thought was very powerful.
Yeah, you should know, to my daughter, the teacher, you should, of all people, should know that when you're facing a really, really strong test or challenge, the teacher is always silent during the test.
Absolutely.
And she gets it, that's why she feels I'm not hearing from God now. I'm in the crucible, and I'm taking a stand I think I have to take, but I'm not feeling his presence. And I think that's what was going on in the Garden of Eden, personally, because the picture we get is of perfect people set in a perfect environment, of course, by a perfect God who says, in effect, I'll come visit you in the evening and see how you're doing. And during my visit, I'll tell you how to do some other things. And you, Adam, you can name all the animals. That'll keep you busy for a while. And just simple instructions. But it says he came in the cool of the evening. So that he left them there all day, and I bet you that was the usual thing. And it was so they could, he could find out, are they going to obey me or not? Of course, he knew, but at least I think he did, and they didn't. But that's really the pattern we all live in. That it's just like any other school. You learn some principles, and then you get some quizzes or tests to apply the principles to, see if they work.
Absolutely. And one of the things you mentioned, even though like your role is scattered throughout, I think that was one of the strengths of the movie, was that there's various perspectives, on both sides in various forms, and I really enjoyed that. And would you agree with that?
Yes, and that's important, because if it's just a one-sided polemic, then people who don't agree with you, you may not convince them. But if you let people see both sides of the issue, and particularly when it goes into, the attorney wanted to prove that even the idea there was a real Jesus is ridiculous. He was like Paul Bunyan or some other make-believe character. And of course, I know Lee Strobel, one of the people that was one of the attorneys that was called to testify, who had done the historical research and even like a detective would do, to go back and check on history as recorded and prove beyond any question, both of them did in court under oath, that there was a historical Jesus who was known to have performed miracles and who was crucified and reported to have been raised from the dead, and who started this incredible following, this movement that spread throughout the then known world. So all of that was factual, and that, of course, that really pulled the rug out from under this high-pressure atheistic attorney, because he thought he could just make light and ridicule of the very existence of Jesus. And therefore, if he did occur historically, and the Bible is historically a record of what he said, and Martin Luther King did quote him, then her answer to the kid's question was appropriate for a history teacher to answer. So I don't want to spoil it for people. I don't want them to know how it all turned out if they haven't seen the film. But you agree it's a film worth seeing.
I agree. Let me ask you this, because just the way you're kind of talking, obviously you had said that it was important faith-based people made this movie.
Yeah.
But how do you, so obviously that's step one, let's say, of preparation for this movie. What's step two to prepare for this, for the various roles, whether you personally or the other actors that you got to work with?
Well, the role, the actors in the film, it's ideal if, particularly in key roles, if they're played by people who believe. Sometimes the actors and actresses, of course, they have to portray things maybe that are not common to them, or not familiar, or not even things they may not believe. But for instance, Richard Dreyfuss played Bernie Madoff, and he does an incredible job of this shyster criminal who hoodwinked so many famous people and bankrupted many. But Dreyfuss can do a great job. Even Jim Caviezel, who played Jesus, I've seen him play a bad guy in a film now, and I hate to see it, really, because I still associate him with his characterization of Jesus. But an actor has to get under the skin of, to the best of his or her ability, and know what motivates that person he or she's playing. So, of course, a Christian playing a role has to do the same thing. Now, it's easier for a Christian to play a Christian. Now, I am so honored for my whole life. I think is one of the most blessed moments in my whole life and career is that George Stevens, who produced the greatest story ever told, the film of Jesus long before the Passion, but a great, great film with a huge, celebrity star cast, he asked me to play the role of the angel at the tomb. When the two Marys came on that first morning and found the tomb empty, and the Bible, well, one gospel says two angels and one says one, but I was asked to be the angel at the tomb and speak the most important words ever spoken in all of history, even more than the angels who were saying, "Unto you a Savior is born," as important as that was. If the words couldn't have been spoken that I spoke in the film, why do you seek the living among the dead? He is not here. He is risen, just as he said. If those words hadn't been spoken and weren't true, then all the rest wouldn't have mattered that much to all of us. But for me to be able to be chosen, now when I asked the director, part in answer to your question here, how do I understand method acting, try to get under the skin of and have some of the same experience as the person I'm playing, but how do I do that with an angel? He said, well, one of the versions says, young man in white raiment. Just be a young man in white raiment and be just a little bit edgy that they didn't believe what the Savior told them. Why do you seek the living among the dead? He's not here. He is risen just as he said. And do it sort of like that, like, why didn't you believe what he told you? Of course, that's from an angel perspective. But anyway, when I went to the premiere of the film at the Cinerama Dome, and there were, the place was full, and we had a couple friends up in the balcony, we could see it all better. And the lights came up at the end of the film, and my friends looked at me and said, did we fall asleep? Where were you? They knew I was in the film. I hadn't told them what role I was playing. I said I was the angel at the tomb, but George Stevens had lit me in such a way that there was a hood. I was wearing a hoodie, a robe and the hood shadowed half my face, so that you probably didn't recognize me. And I was glad, because I didn't want people to say, oh, there's Pat Boone. In that most climactic moment in all of human history, it was like later when John Wayne played the soldier who said, surely this was the king, this was the Son of God. You almost could hear him say, surely, Pilgrim, this was the Son of God. No, you didn't want to hear it. You didn't want it was John Wayne saying that. So I was glad that I was able, or George Stevens helped me hide in the character of the angel. But Jennifer Garner just played a film, which is out there now, Miracles from Heaven, and it's a true story. And she herself says that playing this woman, the mother of the child who experienced this undeniable recorded miracle of healing, something she was dying of, and then a 30-foot fall in the barrel of a dead tree did something in her brain, and the disease went away, and so it was obviously a miracle. The doctors say so, but what was my point now?
Now, Pat,
Jennifer Garner said that playing that woman has greatly emboldened her own faith. And a lady just told me in my office today, I did a movie called The Cross and the Switchblade, playing Dave Wilkerson. And that movie went around the world and was an independent production. It was not a huge box office smash because it was not distributed by a major studio. It was an independent production and distribution, but it still went around the world in many languages. And somebody just told me today that the group U2, Bono and U2, when they were just getting started as a group out of Dublin, and they were Catholics, and they were singing some Christian-themed songs. I think they called themselves the Journeymen. And we met in England. I was on tour. I didn't remember this, but they told me later. And then they said that as they were just getting started, they saw the film, The Cross and the Switchblade. And it made such an impression on them that they began to write and record songs that were Christian themed. So the movies have great power, and I think when they're told truthfully that God breathes some of His own life into those films, so that it does strengthen people's faith, and even will convince some skeptics or some people that are undecided that these things are true, and they ought to apply them in their own lives.
So, Pat, yeah, thank you so much. You have such a depth of knowledge and so many different life experiences, so we thank you for sharing that. And being on set here of God's Not Dead 2, when you were on set, tell us about your experience, if you would, sir. If you can share what it was like to work with this group of actors and how you felt being a part of this, having a granddaughter that was facing this legal battle. And of course, I know you're proud of all your children and grandchildren and greats. And, you know, what are you, 81 years young now?
I'm 81, and I'll be 82 in June, which means I will have finished my 82nd year. And I'm still playing singles tennis, and don't tell him I said so, but I played a fellow who's been my opponent for years and was beating up on me till I had my knee replaced. And now I'm back on the court, and a week ago today, he beat me 7-5 the first set, and then I beat him 6-2 the second. So I'm back on the tennis court and feeling like I'm 30 or 40. But it was fun. The people, Melissa and the other actors and actresses, the director, everybody on it, except the evil attorney, atheistic attorney. I didn't meet him, and I would like to have met him really, but boy, he really played his part so great that you have to almost boo and hiss when you see him on the screen. But you know, when they came to that moment in the film, I'd read it in the script, but it didn't occur to me how moving it would be as it was portrayed. And I just said those words to Melissa as her grandfather about when the test occurs, the teacher's silent, and something draws our attention outside. We go to the door, open the door, and there at midnight, and it was midnight in Little Rock when we were filming, there's this fairly large group of high schoolers from a church choir, and they're singing How Great Thou Art. The cause may be lost because it looked like it was, but they wanted her to know that they were taking the same stand that she was taking. And it was so moving that Melissa was not in the script, but she just collapsed in my arms, crying. And then when we finished that take, the director was crying, the cameraman was crying, the sound people back in the house in Little Rock were crying. I mean, it was that moving. And so it's obvious it was more than just some kids singing a song, or even something that was written on paper, or that we were portraying. But I think God was in that moment. I mean, it impacted all of us, and it's on the screen. And people now tell me that when they see the film, that it hits them the same way. And you don't know for sure how the film is going to turn out, but there's something moving, so moving, about somebody with great conviction who will not be intimidated, and who will, no matter what, take that stand. And it took me back to Matthew 10:32 when I was 13, and I was reading the Bible myself because my younger brother had just been baptized. I was 13, and people look at me, well, what's wrong with Pat? Why hasn't he been baptized? And I was just holding back enough to read the Bible myself and know why I was doing this. I knew it was important, but I wanted to know why. And I came to Matthew 10:32, and I see Jesus say, if anyone, any man or anyone will confess me before men, I'll confess him before my Father in heaven. if he denies me before men, I will deny him before my Father. And at 13, that was simple enough. I understood, and I knew that was the most important decision I would ever make in my whole life. And so I did soon, right away, walk down an aisle and make my own confession of faith and was baptized. And it made a very strong impact on my life, which, I mean, endures today, of course. So that truth, when people hear the truth, it will make an impact on anybody that's receptive to truth. Now, there are those who don't want to hear truth, and they'll deny it. But I want to be on the side that gets confessed before our Father.
Why is the Christian walk an exciting one for you, Pat? How many miracles have you seen, and why do you feel that this is what the next generation should pursue as the Lord?
Well, it is tremendously exciting. In fact, I spoke at church and they asked me to deliver a sermon, and I did, and I really spent some time because I thought I was going to be a teacher preacher anyway before my singing career took over, and I knew it was God doing it, directing my life. So the sermon I preached was the gospel, a call to arms, and I've never ever heard anybody present it this way. It was something I felt was revelation to me. But even in the Sermon on the Mount and in those first chapters in Matthew, where Jesus lays it out, he's just been baptized himself, gone into the wilderness for 40 days, was tempted by the devil. He comes out and begins to preach in the villages. And it's recorded what he preached, and he was letting people know that you're going to have to make a decision. Are you willing to pick up a cross and follow me? This was in his very first sermon. And of course, even in the Beatitudes, which we love to quote, blessed are the poor in heart and those are the meek, and blessed are you when they persecute you, and so on. But also, blessed are those who forgive. If you forgive those who persecute you, then your Father will forgive you. If you do not, he will not forgive you. There's an if. and so I picture Jesus coming out of the desert after the temptation and entering on a field of battle with bodies strewn everywhere, because the Bible says we were all dead in our sins until we receive him. We're dead. We're the walking dead. But if we receive him who is life, then life becomes a great adventure. And, oh goodness, I could go on and on about it. But when I just read the 77th Psalm today, and I was not coincidentally talking to somebody facing some great life trials, a minister. And I said, read the 77th Psalm, because David was talking about how he felt so apart from God. He was aware of his own failings. He says, I can't sleep at night. I cry out to you. Why don't you answer me? And about halfway through, he starts to recount all the things God has done for him in his life up till then, and also for the people of Israel. And that's the answer. Once you start counting your blessings, like Irving Berlin said, but start recounting what God's done for you already, the crises you've already come through, and how he didn't let you fail or sink or die, and he's not going to let you down now. But life is that. It's an adventure, and in its own way, it is a war. The battle is on for our souls, and the battle is not just out there. It's in us. We're the battlefield where the main battle's taking place, the battle for our souls, and it's out around us, all the things that we face in this life. So we know who wins, and we can be on the winning side. That's what makes it exciting. But we're going to meet challenges. And our own grandson, Ryan, we're still recovering after 15 years. But when Larry King, an agnostic, asked her on his show, Lindy, if your prayers aren't answered the way you want, is that going to shake your faith? And sweet Lindy said, no. The Bible says that we will all face trials in this life, and we may not seem to win them all, but what we are on the winning side when it comes to eternity. And if Ryan goes to heaven before we do, we know we'll see him again, and we'll know where he is while we're apart. So no, our faith won't be shaken. So, Larry needs to hear all that, because I know that he still can't answer the question of why does God let terrible things happen to good people. And I've answered it, and other people have answered it, but so far it hasn't registered with him that we're in a fallen world and bad things do happen all around us. They happen to Jesus, they happen to all the followers, and you press on. And he said, I'll be with you. I'm not going to keep every bad thing from happening to you, but I'll go through it with you.
And there's a supernatural strength that people don't see that you can have in your being. You can see the angels. You can walk in that, and they're not seeing when Stephen's being stoned that he's probably seeing the heavens open up.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Man, he would say, "Look, there he is. I'm coming." and yes, that was a magnificent moment. I don't know that it's been truly shown in a film, but nowadays, I mean, a good director producer could show. And I wonder, did Roma Downey? I'm trying to remember. She showed the Book of Acts. They produced that on NBC. It did not get the ratings that the original one, the Bible, got, but still, it was millions. When I went on Larry King's show, and we talked 4 different occasions about Ryan, and talked about Jesus, about prayer, and with ministers that I invited to come on, like Ken Copeland, Rick Warren, Oral Roberts. I'm trying to think of some of who the others were, but in all the 4 appearances with Larry, there was no Deepak Chopra, no nobody, the Force is with you, or any of those people, but it was all about Jesus and about prayer and about how God does perform miracles and does answer prayer. And I asked each of the ministers afterwards, at that point, Larry King's shows were being seen by an estimated 50 million people, because they would be seen 3 times on CNN around the world. And when you added up all the people that they estimated that were seeing each show, it was like 50 million. I said, what do you think the Apostle Peter or James or John would have given for this opportunity that we just walked into a studio and had for an hour to talk to 50 million people about how good God is and why we trust him and why it's important to pray and have faith in our times of trial and trouble? What do you think? They would have given an arm, a leg, or their lives. And we just walked in a studio and we could do that for 50 million people. Well, these movies reach millions of people. Anyway, I could talk to you all afternoon, but that's not what you want, and I better shut up.
No worries. Well, we'll let you get going. But if you will, can you give us like a quick list of movies that you would recommend for people to watch besides this one, obviously?
Well, I've made another one called the Boonville Redemption, and it's not released yet. It's coming this year sometime into theaters, and it's about a faith-based situation that happens in a little town which does exist in Northern California called Boonville. And it's Boone without the E, Boonville, Boonville Redemption. And it has to do, it's not a true story, but it is based on things that are happening. And I play an older guy again. I don't know why they are picking me to play an older guy now, but but it is a much more pivotal role. Doc Woods in this little town, and the minister is shot dead in his church on a weekday afternoon while the women are in a Bible study outdoors. And it's suspected who did it, the town tyrant, but there's no witnesses, and everybody's cowed by him anyway, except this old Doc Woods. and I get to play the doc. And I won't tell you anything about the story, but it's another faith-based film. I hope people, after they see God's Not Dead 2, will then also want to go see Boonville Redemption. But there are others in the process being made right now. And, of course, War Room is a great one about the woman who prays and things change outside where she's praying. And I'm trying to think of some of the others that are out there, and there are others being made. So
Absolutely.
just look for them. They're going to be promoted better. The general public will know, and certainly there is a large, viable Christian market. And I do encourage every Christian, once you hear there is a faith-based film, even if it turns out to be one that maybe you don't buy into totally, that if it's faith-based, go see it, buy a ticket, let Hollywood studios know that Christians will pay to come see a film with moral Christian family values. Once they know that's a fact, they'll try to make more of them.
Absolutely.
And they'll hire faith-based people to make them.
Amen.
Well, okay.
Well, there you go, sir. Well, this was an absolute pleasure, and I know this kind of came together last minute, but we'd love to have you in studio in the future to really talk about your career. And there's so many things to talk with
that
you.
could be arranged. I've got another couple of stories to tell you when that comes.
I'm sure you do, and we'd love to hear them, as I know the
Like
fans
when
would
Elvis
too.
was my opening act, and my relationship with him, and other things like that.
Absolutely.
Well, okay, we'll be talking.
Sounds good. We appreciate your time, sir.
God bless you guys.
Thank you so much.
Me too.
Well, there you go. That was very exciting.
Yes.
Very neat.
The Pat Boone. The Pat Boone.
Full of wisdom.
Absolutely, and like I said, I mean, we'll definitely follow up because that man's got stories.
Yeah. War Room actually has made more than 100 million. It was kind of a Hollywood upset, so to speak, because here these pastors out of Atlanta, Georgia, media pastor in the church, and they're friends of ours, and so they, started making these movies, and lo and behold, they're hitting it hard with Sony. So there's all kinds of possibilities out there, and I love the fact that Daddy Pat, that's what he said his little girls used to call him when he was on TV, and they would look at this TV, and go, "Oh, hi, Daddy Pat." So I want to call him Daddy Pat. Although Melissa would call him Granddaddy Pat probably, but he had a different name in the movies.
Absolutely. One of the things as kind of this went on, one of the things I remembered that I want to talk about was remember. Juror number 12 was such an important role, and the way they played that of not being, figuring out who was going to get what juror. And then obviously, it seems like a small miracle that we get the juror that we want. He's the pastor, he's religious, and we're able to get him on. But then when he has his whole medical condition, story-wise, I loved it because it's like, oh, is this really failing? And we get the girl that replaces him, and you don't really know where it's going. And I thought, as story-wise, that was really so well done. That I just have to applaud them.
Yes.
Yeah, I like that too because it also not just mentally, but like in a physical kind of aspect too. Is that it kind of resonates the question like, did God leave her in the courtroom? Did religion leave her? Because he was really the only one representing any kind of faith-based perception and opinion. And then you take that away, she's literally all by herself. And you just have to question, like, did God really leave her? And does she believe in her faith that much to be by herself during this whole movie? And I thought that was interesting.
Right, because even her defense attorney was not a believer.
No.
So she was definitely, that's an excellent point, Marissa. Yeah. It's interesting to see how all of that drama played out. Like Pat was saying, the prosecutor looking kind of having the devilish grin and really...
He played that to perfection.
Yeah.
He really did. And he was so maniacal. Absolutely. One of the things that I found interesting also about that character was they had to hand in their sermons. And he was the one who chose not. He just wrote a letter of why he's not doing it. We never got to see that, though. I wish we did. That was the one tiny bit that I...
Did you totally see, though, at the end of the credits, there was a surprise?
I missed that. What was
Was
the?
the post credit?
Okay, he was arrested.
Oh.
Yes, because they came after him right after that and said, "You never turned in your
sermons."
I guess it was a subpoena, right? Which is a court order, and you don't do it. You're handcuffed, which he was. So I'm thinking in God's Not Dead 3,
That's
that we're
that's
gonna
Yep.
interesting.
we're
Yeah.
gonna see some action from David White and his posse.
That I think that would be. I think that would be fun. Yeah, because I did miss that. I didn't stay for the full credits, but that's going to be interesting.
Yeah, which, by the way, he and his wife, they go through a lot of battles. Pat was talking about the battles that we go through. Well, some of those obviously can be intensified, but then there's also a favor, I think, that people walk in. When you know where you're supposed to be and you find meaning in what you're doing, it's like you can take on anything, but if you feel like, well, and we all doubt, well, am I, it can get very philosophical. So anyway, Pat's been so philosophical. I'm going to stick with where you're headed with this film.
No worries. I mean, it's just one of those things. Again, it's tough to talk about this movie and fully separate out the thing, but that's what it's trying to say is that you don't necessarily have to separate out these various elements, and that you can have a discussion about it. And I also think, one of the things that I always take away from it is like, if you are a non-believer, why are you always so scared to talk about it? Like, just by talking about it, is that going to all of a sudden shake up your belief?
Yeah, and one thing I've noticed in a lot of productions, whether it's TV or movies, is that people are throwing around the name of Jesus just kind of casually. And I never hear Buddha, I don't hear Allah, but I hear Jesus. And it can be in a cursing way or it can be in a blessing way. So that's kind of what you're saying. Is it also, what is that pointing to? What is that the first word that somebody says when they need relief, when they need mercy, when they're trying to find a way out of the trouble they're in?
Yeah, and I like that point too, because also there were some moments, even at right at the beginning of this movie, and you see everything's going wrong with the pastor, and those are moments where people would yell profanity and curse words, but I noticed throughout this whole film there was not one moment of cursing from anybody. There was no shaming and taking the Lord's name in vain, which I like that.
Yeah, it's just kind of getting back to a purity that I think we've gotten away from in film in general. It's we've seen so much darkness. It's like, really, again? And so, but let's explore more of morality's okay to ethics are okay to explore in film, and the purity and the light, because it says no matter how much darkness there is, that God's light will always shine out the darkness. So it's like, it's okay to do that, and I like what they stand for.
Absolutely. The last thing I'll say about David, because one of the things you write in God Is Not Dead, the original, you mentioned the car breaking down, and then in this one it's brought back that he got a Prius. It was actually Prius who called the producers or whoever and kind of made it happen and said, like, you guys should have a Prius in this movie. Which I thought was a very interesting kind of marketing campaign.
That
for
is
them.
Cool. Right. I need what do you need, Phil? I need something right here and right now.
Priuses are great.
I like Priuses, but I also think of what that speaks to, though. Also, that a company that big is willing to get behind a movie like this, right? It speaks to not only the whole notion that Pat was saying that Hollywood's got to get behind faith-based movies. But it's also interesting if corporations then start getting into these, you know what I mean? And that's a big shift. I think that represents something.
Yes, there is a financial, lucrative investment that's being made in these movies, and then they're also now seeing the return. So it's no longer just an independent film that's maybe making it to the bookstore, which is fine in a specific niche. But actually, there's Parables TV now, which is a complete faith-based network, and our movie was a Parables movie of the week that was on Daystar TV. And so anyway, all that
What was
just
the name of the
saying-
movie?
Okay, One More Round, and that was that boxing movie, and
Yeah.
Jeremy London and Kevin Sorbo, and then Franco Columbo, friends with Arnold Schwarzenegger, and so it was a really nice cast. But my husband produced that, so I kind of had it in on there. Wow. Yeah.
Hey, nothing wrong with that. Nothing. I mean, you and your husband. I mean, that's why I knew I had to bring you in on this on this one to talk about it, because you guys, to kind of give Mindy some credit. I didn't do it at the top, but she's been in this business, so has her husband, and they have a lot of experience. And so
Thank you.
she's not brought in just because she's a fan of these movies.
Thank you
Let's
very
say
much.
that. So, let's talk about the director Harold Kronk. He's done a couple of movies at this point. Jerusalem Countdown, Adventures of Mickey Madsen. He's done a couple of those, and he's going to continue on with that series. He did the first God's Not Dead. He has a background. He went to college, and one of his degrees is in education, which I thought was a good tie. Was a good tie into this movie, since it is all the things that we talked about, but at its core, it's also about the educational system. Mindy, are you familiar with him in terms of as a person or traits as a director?
I'm not. I was actually curious if he was also the director of the first one. Do we know?
He was.
Yeah,
he
he
Okay,
was. Yeah.
so yeah, I felt like he was a real strong director, but I don't know particularly anything about him personally. That's sorry.
No worries. I mean, and it makes sense. I'm glad he got to continue, and he wanted to continue from the first to the second, because if obviously that one works so well, why change it up?
Yeah, and I think I actually very much enjoyed the directing, because if you take it from the first one, that had its beats of, okay, the student is going to have a lecture on this one time, and then you're going to go back and you're going to take yourself out of the classroom, and then you're going to go back, have another lecture. And I think that structure kind of still reflected in the second film when it came to the courtroom. Like, you're going to go in here for a day and talk about X, Y, and Z, come out, and then you go back into it and then talk to another witness or whatnot. And I think that structure of keep going at it with a different topic or approach every single time, I liked that storytelling method, and I definitely got the idea across from both, and I think that was just a good structural pacing.
Right. It's a very nice, creatively controlled ensemble piece. And the Chinese young man that he had stood up and said, God's not dead. In the first one, now we see that his dad just slapped him across the face. And that's completely unacceptable. And I know what that's like. Even growing up in Texas, you would think everybody believes, but it was highly offensive to my own dad. And it was very much a volatile situation where I was living on my own even at 17 because I had put my faith in, just in what I was raised in, but yet it can be very much, you don't say anything, but you can be preaching way too loud for some people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they have. Where was I going? Oh, one of the things. So I was going to talk about this. With the courtroom scenes, right? You mentioned your love of courtroom scenes. I know Marissa. She likes a good procedural every now and then.
Every now and then, yes.
But I got to say, from a production standpoint, they're not the easiest thing to shoot. Because think about it, you have the whole, you got the judge, you got the jury, you got the prosecution, the defense, the witness, and then there's a lot of walking and standing by whoever's, doing the talking, whoever the lawyer is. So and then of course you have the crowd watching. I mean, that's a lot of elements in any given scene. So yeah, I mean, I have to applaud them. I thought, between the way it was shot and between the pacing, it really moved so well. Because I think we do take it for granted, that there's so many great procedurals out there, but I have to commend it.
There were 3 different points of action. Like you had mentioned, David White's character getting up and passing out. He had that medical condition, so then he was escorted out. And then at one point, the defense attorney, on the final day of the trial, he's actually late. And then he comes barging in, so to speak, and so that was rather
Do you think
dramatic.
that was part of his tactic?
Yes, I do. I think he had to get his game on so much that he was like, she's not going to like this. I have to do this. I have to go there. And so then before that, though, she had her moment. No, it was not her. I'm sorry. It was the young woman, that she was such a great actress, had the tears and just a very powerful scene in the church where she was giving her life. And then the Chinese guy had come to her and then they were building a relationship. So the Chinese guy had chosen either his dad or this new faith in this community, and it became very black and white. And then he was there to help her in her point of need. So I like how they also interwove the connection of faith believers and how you really do become this family referred to as God's family, people that are actually walking in that. Yeah, so that was really cool. But back to the courtroom, she barges in the courtroom. So there was kind of 3 action points, and I really liked how they brought in that extra drama so it wasn't mundane. And they tried to beef it up. Of course, very interesting debates, but not everyone is dialogue driven. So then they had some physicality there with the girl barging in.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of go off of that too, but I feel like there were, every time we kept going back to the courtroom, there were different tones, emotional tones. So like when we started off, it was somewhat lighter. We had a joke in and out here and there, and then it got more progressively serious every single time we kept going. And Phil, you had a good point. There's so many people in such a small, confined space. How do you show it and keep showing the same location over and over again in a physical, interesting way? And yet that's just a feat in and of itself when
Right.
it comes to cinematography and whatnot. But I think the tones for every time we kept going back, it always felt different. Like he was hostile at the end. In the middle, it was kind of here and there. There was suspense in a way too. And at the beginning, it was comedy. So there was just different things that kept the audience moving along as well.
Right, and to draw on a little of my experience with the courtroom drama, the trial of the century with O.J., well, I had interviewed him back in the day. And so I was recently on Entertainment Tonight and shared that interview for the first time publicly, and it all was because of, on FX right now, the 10 episodics. And so I just really enjoyed also watching how powerful their performances were in lieu of, the courtroom drama as well.
Absolutely. Let's see. Yeah, I mean, one of the things in terms of the girl, I thought it was so again, just for. Well, no, I'm saying in the sense like I just really hate, again, because my whole thing is I'm going against the critics. I don't understand how they just don't like the story. You can't necessarily judge it on that, right? And so the fact that I from a story perspective, I thought it was fantastic. Here's this person that's trying to help, right? And, because the whole trial is based around her, and she has no say up until any of this point. And then when she finally does get a say, she feels like she's ruined everything. And, and as you were talking about, then she's able to kind of bond more closely with the Chinese character. I thought that was so powerful because, again, she feels, in that moment, she herself feels deflated, much like Grace does at the moment.
Yes. And I think that's part of when someone puts their faith in God, they're going to come up against that attack because of the war that Pat mentioned, that immediately that's going to happen. That's why it's so important to be insulated with people and to ask the 147 questions if you need
So
to.
specific. But you could see the wheels turning. He was like, yeah, and for every question I have, there's like 3 or 4 more. And he was just like, okay, so now we're up to almost 1,000.
So what do you think this is going to do at the box office? Where are we at right now? Is it...
Right now we're at...
It's like
we grossed 8.8 million so far. It came in 4th at the box office behind Batman vs Superman, Zootopia, and My Big Fat Greek Wedding 2. So it's going to go up against some competition, and I think its most direct competition would be My Big Fat Greek Wedding 2.
Limited theatrical release, and I think the budget was between 3 and 4 million, and probably with
Yeah.
P&A added on to that, another however many more million, because they've done good getting the word out. It seems like the trailers I've seen are shorter than a long version trailer, if that makes sense.
Yeah, because for social media purposes, I think it's easier to share that versus a 2.5-minute trailer. So I absolutely agree, and I think. I mean, again, I mentioned at the top, a very low Rotten Tomatoes score. However, the cinema score, which is what the audience score is an A, which is very high. I mean, certainly Batman v Superman does not have an A.
Oh, okay.
Zootopia does, but that is a good movie.
yeah,
yeah,
that's
it
a
was
solid
really.
movie, you guys.
So,
Oh, the blood.
But I think that that just shows. Don't always go off the critics. Go off of what you, the audience member, feels like this movie deserves.
So you think anybody should go see this, even if they're going to be offended? You think they would still be okay
no, I
watching
say
it?
go see this movie with an open mind.
I think I mean, one of the reasons why I do like Anatomy is that it forces me to see movies that I normally necessarily wouldn't see. And I'm trying to give examples of the various things. I'll take Marissa because she's an easier example. She hates zombie movies, but there's how many zombie movies are out there in the past few years, and because of this, she has to go see it. But again, it forces her to kind of open up her mind, and
That's
so,
good.
so I think we should all do that just in general. And that doesn't mean you have to go. I'm not saying go see every single movie, go spend all your money. I get that sometimes not. There's some people that only see like 2 movies a year, and whatnot. But see them when it comes out on Netflix, Hulu, whatever the case may be, when it's on demand. Check out these various movies that, again, might not necessarily be in your initial like, oh, I'd like to see that, and challenge yourself, and especially when people say that, again, at the core of it, it is a good movie. It tells a good story.
Are you going to have any predictions about God's Not Dead 3?
Well, yeah, I think you already did. I think we cemented that. Yeah.
Yeah, the characters of the defense attorney and Melissa could, her character, Grace,
Yeah.
they might end up having a relationship, or you think that's kind of over. We didn't know if that was going to happen. So
We didn't, especially because Grace's grandfather, Pat, was the one who said, as much as I like getting breakfast from you, you should find some other guy to have breakfast with.
What a great line to memorize, Bill.
I thought it was just funny, cause, and yeah, because she made it multiple times of a point of how, quote unquote, her words, pathetic she was with her social life.
Yeah, and the writers of this film, when they started just God's Not Dead, they always had this idea for a 3-part film. And I think they mentioned that, like, this one is like more of a call to action, and then the third one would be more the inspired word of God. So that'd be like the theme of the third one. So like they want to do a third one. You already know that's probably going to happen. But going from just off of that, what we think is going to happen. Watching the first one, I noticed there was a lot of unresolved stories going on, and I didn't know if that was supposed to be on purpose, because if you take it to the second one, those people came back and actually got the resolve in the second film. And then I felt there were some stories in the second film that were unresolved, and I think that's now on purpose because they might come back in the third film to get the resolve.
Right.
What I did appreciate is that, because again, I did not see the first one, it didn't take away from the experience, right? It would have made it a little bit more richer. I think that's the same as if you go see a Marvel movie, and if you know the comics, it's a little bit richer, but you don't necessarily have to. And I actually applaud it, because there's a lot of sequels that you're like, oh, I have no idea what's going on. This didn't make me feel that way. You kind of get tossed into it. It's a lot of characters at the beginning, but within the first 6 minutes, then you're put at ease, and you're like, okay, this person's doing this, and I get it. We're off to a good start.
Absolutely. I mean, I was with you, Phil. I didn't see the first one when I saw this one, but I easily understood what was happening, because I think that's also a testament to the story itself. It is fairly simple, and it's easy to understand that it's not overwhelmingly confusing if you miss it. Yes, a certain beat or here and there.
Well, in the first God's Not Dead, at the very end, after Kevin Sorbo, his character had flipped up, and there was that scenario. Well, they all went to that concert for the Newsboys, and he's singing God's Not Dead. Well, then the Duck Dynasty guy came on and said, text your friends, God's not dead. And so then it would be a multiplication type of a thing. That was pretty cool.
Yeah.
But then in this particular film, we see their daughter in real life. Is it Sadie? Is that her name from the
Sadie.
Duck Dynasty? And she did a really good job. I was glad that she was playing a smaller role, because I thought it was more powerful where she's at right now. She had done the Dancing with the Stars, and yeah, so she's a cool cat, as far as a young up and comer, and I like her demeanor, and so it was fun to see her. And then at the end of the movie, they tried to do the texting thing again, but it was more like just kind of a one-liner. So,
But that was more of a call to action.
yeah, it
Because
was.
that's
true.
In the first one, it was telling the people in the movie to do something, but now in the second one, it was actually telling people who are watching the movie to do
Yeah,
something. That actually spoke to the crowd, and that direct interaction, which I think is smart.
Yeah, and we kind of have we have a saying here at AfterBuzz and Popcorn Talk about sometimes the term preaching to the choir, that it has a negative connotation, but sometimes you have to preach. That's the people that sometimes need it. And in this case, it was noted a lot of times like they are a silent majority or minority or whatever you kind of want to look at it, but they got to now not become silent. And that's the whole, as Marissa was saying, not the call to action.
Yeah, that's very important right now, that we remember that we have freedom of speech in America and that we don't ever want that taken away. That's one of the founding principles of our country. And being in the media, of course, you don't want people controlling the media. I mean, do we want a socialist country? Some people say we're already there, but I say we're still America. I think that, freedom of speech, that's why we get to sit here. That's why Pat was like, this is awesome. I mean, these guys would have died, given a leg or an arm just to be doing what we're doing and sharing this particular message. So I'm excited, again, to be here. Thank you, Phil.
No problem. Speaking of people helping promote the movie, Mike Huckabee, he offered a free screening of the movie over in Iowa.
Wow.
So, yeah. And obviously he was also in the movie, so that was a good little bit.
Oh, right. Yes.
Any other tidbits? I know, Marissa, you kind of did additional research right before the show as well. So any cool little nuggets that you want to bring in?
I thought it was interesting when I'm a big fan of Jesse Metcalf and how he was involved, and I liked his character and what he had such a strong belief of something, but that didn't deter his character. That didn't take him away and stop what he was doing from him doing his job, and to actually help get the win in the end. But doing the research on him, because Pat said a great thing to make a Christian-based film movie. You have to get, well, you don't always have to get, but it's good to get people who are Christian-based. And Jesse said himself that he found God years ago when he was going through Alcoholics Anonymous, when he was trying to clean up and get sober.
Yeah, that's really good. That's where a lot of people get exposed to sort of a level of faith is in AA, although they don't want you talking about that on the media. Or, like Adult Children of Alcoholic, that's another one, really good. I've gone to that one. And you kind of get exposed to, okay, this is really practical, and then you can go as deep as you want to go. And there's really, nobody else can control how deep you can go in your own faith.
Yeah. Well, speaking of... one of the reasons why I think people find God in the time of need, much like the girl who just survived cancer, right? And the interesting, she had an interesting storyline where she was struggling of, I believed in God then, but I'm not sure now. Has he left me and this and that? And I like the way that storyline progressed, and she was the exploration for all this. Go ahead, Marissa.
Yeah, I like that character because she was one of the characters in the first film that was pretty unresolved. I
Yes.
feel like because in the first one she was diagnosed with cancer, and then she made friends with the newsboys, but at the end of the first one they're praying and they do share great moments, but her story wasn't like, okay, will she be okay at the end? And then I liked how they actually bring her back like, yeah, she is okay, and she kept with her faith. And then we see the whole resolve with the newsboys, like, yes, our good friend is now in remission. And so, again, there are stories and characters from the first one that were unresolved, but I kind of like how they got the resolve in this one.
Yeah, what an amazing character arc for her, because she went into sort of not having faith after she was healed. A lot of times people are like, I've experienced a miraculous healing in my body, and and then I thought, all my character issues are going to be fixed after that. But not necessarily. So you just think, this one moment's going to, fix everything, so to speak. And, I think that's interesting because people find God when they're desperate. They find God when they need a healing. They can experience the healing, but then maybe the faith doesn't stick. Maybe they, because you're used to functioning a certain way, and how do you incorporate this thing in your life? How do you grow in this thing in your life? And so it's kind of like a mustard seed, though, is what it is really. And it grows and it grows and it grows, and then it's like right now actually is called the Year of Jubilee, and every 40 years in the Old Testament, they would have, and even the New. So there's been 40 since, I think, the life of Jesus. And right now it's a very special time because they have like the Passover's the first one, then a couple other festivals. But anyway, just to spring back into the teachers, because I don't think that a teacher is going to go to school and say, I want to deliberately offend this student's parents today. Teachers are hard, they're nurturing, they're underpaid a lot of times. They're there doing an enormous responsibility, even if it's 20 or 30 in a classroom. And so I think, let's take it easy on them and address these issues at home as much as we can. I think that what good is it going to do? What good is it really going to do? If it's a good thing, why take it out?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I like the idea that on the flip side of the first one, because the first one we had a student who was proclaiming the faith, and then this one we had a teacher compared to not a student. So I like how they kind of changed just the perspective that it was more in an adult kind of situation. And I think that's why we were actually allowed to go to the federal court, because it was on a more mature kind of mentality. And I like that flip from not a young person telling about a faith, but an adult who's actually well established and has a stronger, more sense of self going about this topic. But I thought that was just interesting. That's how they wanted to show this perspective.
Absolutely. Well, there you go. Any final thoughts as we wrap this up?
Yeah, I'm just so thankful that that they made this movie, that they have a voice, like you pointed out, Marissa, that was excellent, that they have a really neat formula, so they can just keep continuing on, almost like episodics, because Star Wars is on 7, and they're going to 3. So I am really encouraged that they're keeping on with this. Of course, David being arrested, his character, David White, we're going to see what unfolds in the third one, so I'm just more ecstatic because, like you say, they can really keep going with these, and I just want to see more of this kind of material out there. And I think that there is a silent majority. We're not supposed to be silent. We're supposed to have a voice for the voiceless, and for those that are being silent, I'm here to say, I'm speaking up. I'm speaking up.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
I fairly enjoyed this movie. I enjoy a lot of faith-based movies and books and whatnot, and I think this film had such a strong message that wasn't like always gonna hit you over the head with it. I understood what they were going for, but yet in a way I want to open it up to the people who might be hesitant to go see this, because you could actually learn something from it. And I think it speaks to the message, and I liked how it spread from adult to the younger demographics as well, so anyone can really see this movie and get a lot out of it.
I agree, and I applaud the cast. Like that, everyone did a fantastic job, and they had a really good ensemble. And as we talked about with Pat, the various perspectives I thought was very powerful, and so that way, you could find something to relate to if you were searching for something. So I overall applaud it, and you know what, I don't applaud anyone who's giving it criticism. I think it's a good movie. I think that's it. That's just what it comes down to. And if anyone, why are you so upset? I forget where I was reading this, but there's and maybe it was a good joke of I'm gonna butcher this, but basically, someone maybe it's the plot of the first one, but basically he says, how can you hate something that doesn't exist? Is that from the first
yes.
one?
Yes. What was his name? Shane. He's in that show, Good Luck Charlie.
Mm-hmm.
He's such a great actor, and he delivered that line mighty powerfully, and you did remember it quite well.
Oh, there you go. See?
Yeah.
But like I said, I have yet to see that one, but I will get to it. And if the third one does come out, I'm sure we'll be doing it here on Anatomy. So thank you guys for joining us.
Yeah.
It was a pleasure having Pat. Mindy, thank you for that. Fans, be sure to leave a comment and thank her for that, because she's the one who made it happen. And of course, by the way, leave some questions for Pat. We're not going to have him back right away, but I'm sure in time we'll get him in studio, and then we'll check back on the questions, and we'll be sure to ask him some of those.
I do enjoy the Newsboys. I've always actually enjoyed their music, and I've actually edited a video to one of their songs. So, and I like the fact that the Newsboys were.
Can
in
people
both
check it
of
out
these
or no?
They could. Yeah. it's
Where do
on-
they check that out?
It's on YouTube. Marissa Movies, my YouTube channel.
There
Go
you
find
go.
it. But I like the music too because they had Newsboys. They're a well-established Christian rock band. So I liked how it is a community and that they believe in their music and faith, and they can speak to the masses too. So, yeah.
Absolutely. So there you have it. Mindy, where can people interact with you?
Mindy Charlotte is my Twitter address, and yeah, just give me a call too. No, I'm just.
There you go.
Or pray for me. You know, I'll feel you. I feel prayers. Sometimes I feel it when people. And I knew you were praying for me. Thank you. I'll pray for you too.
Yeah, there you go. And you can follow me on Twitter at Serafini TV.
And follow us here at the Popcorn Talk and Movie Anatomy, and check out our other shows here on the Popcorn Talk Network. We've got a whole slew of them, so definitely check them out. And check out Anatomy. You know, whatever movie you see, you don't have to see all the movies that we do, but check out once you see a movie. Check back in with us. We've probably done it. We've got a bunch of great movies coming down the pipeline, so definitely stay tuned. And thank you if you're a first timer. Welcome to the show. Hope you check back in. For the time being, we'll see you later.
From producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the rest of the Anatomy of a Movie staff, we would like to thank you for listening and subscribing to the show. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to email or tweet us. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been Anatomy of a Movie.